In last August, the Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker signed a special act of legislature that overrides a 1915 court case over Onset land. With this special ruling, the nonprofit Buzzard Bay Coalition is able to secure a 99-year lease with the town of Wareham over the Onset Bathhouse. Now, even though this decree has received a tremendous amount of support by the town officials and its residents, not everyone is happy. Here to discuss why they oppose the leasing of Onset Bathhouse to the Buzzard Bay Coalition is the Onset All Together Group, spearheaded by Morales and Marie Strawn. Welcome, ladies. Well, so I have invited you here today to talk about the Onset Bathhouse, leasing of the Onset Bathhouse. Buzzard Bay Coalition has expressed some interest, and the town of Wareham, with Buzzard Bay Coalition, have got into a 99-year lease to renovate and expand the Onset Bathhouse. So let's start with, why would you oppose Buzzard Bay's interest on the Onset Bathhouse?
For clarification, and this is an important point, nobody that I know of, including myself, is opposed to the Onset Bay Center being at the bathhouse. Marie's very familiar with the long history of the town renting out the bathhouse. The actual ownership of the bathhouse is lost in history in terms of a title, and that's not relevant. We have no objection whatsoever to the leasing of the bathhouse, which is what was passed at town meeting. We went back, we looked at the town meeting articles. Exactly what was passed was the rejuvenation of the bathhouse. When we actually went and looked at the lease includes the beach and the bluffs and Bayview Park. The beach and the bluffs and Bayview Park were not part of the town meeting article, and they are part of the decree lands, which is what the common term is, not the legal term, but they are part of the lands that were protected forever in the 1916 decree that came out of the Supreme Judicial Court decision. Those lands are specifically not to be leased, sold, or in other ways come into any private hands, nonprofit or otherwise. So there's no objection to leasing the bathhouse. And by the way, they're not rejuvenating, which was what was passed. They are demolishing and rebuilding. Nobody says that it's a historic building, but it's not what was passed in town meeting.
Well,
That's the objection.
They're not demolishing the whole bathhouse.
It's coming right down to the ground.
According to my knowledge, they have secured a $350,000 not donation, but funding in order to restore that historicalness of the bathhouse.
It's not what it is. It's not a historic building, number one. I was down yesterday. I saw all of the plans at the Conservation Commission. They're meeting tonight, so we'll be there for that. No, they're taking it down to the ground, is what I was told by Dave Pichette, the Conservation Commissioner. There's nothing there worth saving except the concrete slab. They are also looking for a variance to the 50-foot no-build zone. It's a bylaw in Wareham where you're not supposed to disturb within 50 feet of the bluffs. They want a variance to that. They are going to remove a good chunk of the bluff, and they will do some planting later, but these are things that are not being talked about. And so nobody at town meeting approved leasing the beach, the bluffs, and part of Bayview Park, and that's what they're doing. So that was a backdoor deal, and it's not what went before the governor. It's not what went before town meeting.
May I ask you a question? Did you vote yes during the town meeting?
It happened right before I moved here, right before I bought my house. So I wasn't there. But even if I had been at town meeting, rejuvenating the bathhouse sounds great. That's wonderful. We're all for that. But that's not what's happening. And if I had been at town meeting, and Marie was, she would never have voted yes if anybody told her. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
The word was rehabilitate. That means take it and fix it up, not tear it down and build some great big thing that's 30 feet high. When I was young, there was a second floor to the bathhouse. It was a completely open balcony, so you could sit on the bluffs and watch the harbor and watch the swimmers. It didn't prevent anybody from looking. Now this is going up, and it will completely obscure the people sitting on the bluffs. from seeing the harbor.
But isn't that assuming so much that, because we have not even gotten to any step yet, because right now they have just secured their lease, a 99-year lease. So, and everything else has to be approved by the town. So the idea or the argument that they are totally going to do something that is against the initial ballot that people voted for.
The lease itself is in violation because they voted for a lease for the building. They did not vote for a lease of the beach, the bluffs, and Bayview Park. The lease in and of itself is the violation. We didn't even get to the point of the building yet. So when Dean, who has a view easement from the case called Dunphy versus OBGA and David War et al., she has a view easement that says that can never be obstructed. And that view easement runs with the property, not with Dean. She's chosen not to object. That's her right. But they still, and Peter Teitelbaum is the self-proclaimed expert on this because he was the lawyer for the original group that opposed some of the actions in town. He worked for the Onset Protective League as an attorney. So he does know quite a bit, maybe not everything. And so he knew what he was doing when he did this. I don't think they thought anybody was actually going to read that lease. And when we did, we realized what happened.
I'm hearing it sounds like this malicious plan cooked by the town officials and so forth, but to what end? What would they benefit from this?
We want to know what the benefit's going to be ultimately because they're not getting any rent out of it. They will get a building.
A building that's going to help the town people.
It's going to help the general public. It's not specifically for Wareham. It's for everybody, which is great. Again, this is not in any way, shape, or form about an opposition to the Onset Bay Center. The Onset Bay Grove Association no longer exists. There is no party to object to that. But the ultimate outcome of that case was that anybody in the public, not just the Commonwealth, not just Wareham, anybody has a right to have free access to that land. And so we feel like this is a very slippery slope, and a good chunk of Onset, which generates a lot of income for the town, is now susceptible to being leased, sold by the town, built on. The town is the trustee of this property, not the owner of the property. And it's a very complicated issue, but we know for a fact that this is not what went before town meeting. And if we're not going to follow the will of the town meeting, what's the point of having it? This is not the realm of only the selectmen.
You have mentioned about destruction of the view. Is that what the argument you're hearing from not only people belonging to the Onset All Together Group, but residents in Onset? Is that their concern?
The general public, not just residents of Onset.
Well, and the Native Americans are very worried about the Indian girl on the bluffs.
What's going to happen to the Indian girl?
Well, they may want to move her, and that would not
But
sit
once
well.
again, I feel like we are still assuming a lot of things.
The plans
they
are
want to
final.
move her, but they can't just move her. These kind of things, they need to be approved. So we cannot speculate what may happen or may not happen because everything is being overseen and the town people have to vote on it.
No, they don't. And one of the things that's important is in the legislation, they added a piece that exempts them from a great deal of the town bylaws and the conservation laws, which is, again, nothing that the town meeting voted for, and it was inserted. I had a long conversation with Mark Pacheco on Sunday.
What did you talk about?
We talked specifically about this and what was the process that he went through in terms of sending this up to the legislature. He got a petition from the town, and they look at that, they assume town council has done their job, and they send it along because
By the petition from the town that people, the majority of the town wanted this to happen.
they get a petition from the town saying, we had a town meeting, this is what happened, this is what we'd like you to do. In the town meeting, in the warrant, it says very clearly, there may be some issues about the lease, and there are. They knew that. So Mark Pacheco's job is not to go back and second guess the town. He has to assume that they've done their job.
Weren't those issues about the lease, the fact that governor had to approve
He just
the
signs.
final?
He just signs it.
No, but I'm saying
Legislature
by the
approves
time
it.
something comes to the governor's desk, assuming that all the right steps have been followed, we have bigger people, people who know about the law. We have our state representatives behind this.
They don't know about the law. They don't understand. The decree of 1916 is so unique and it is so different that it took the Attorney General's office 2 months to even read all the material that Marilyn Knowlton and Marie sent up to them. It's very complicated. And I am so disappointed that on June 17th, the town administrator read into the record at the selectmen's meeting a letter that was only addressed to Marilyn Knowlton and copied to myself from the Attorney General's office. Somehow he had a copy of it and he read it into the record and made the conclusion that, quote, it's done, that he implied to the public that the Attorney General made a ruling. She did not. She declined to act on it at this time, in part because the plans weren't known yet. The plans hadn't been produced. Nobody has seen them until tonight at the Conservation Committee meeting. I had a long conversation with the Attorney General's office last Friday. They specifically did not rule on it. They said, at this time, we are not going to take any action. We are free to bring it back to them, and we intend to.
I take it that you have spoken to various people in this community, various prominent people in this community. Now, are all of them disagreeing with what you're saying?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And it's such a complicated issue that it gets thrown out there as, why would you oppose having the Onset Bay Center? Nobody opposes having the Onset Bay Center.
You're just opposing to what is going to happen.
The process. What already happened. We oppose the process. And this is supposed to be a democratic process at town meeting. And if you don't give people the correct information to vote on, then you can't just run with the fact that everybody loves this. It's not what was voted on. And Mark Pacheco said to me, it needs to go back to the town. And I have no doubt that people would continue to support the Onset Bay Center. I support the Onset Bay Center. I'm a volunteer for the Buzzard Bay Coalition. I've worked at the swim. I'm a donating member. I am not opposed in any way, shape, or form to that. But if they can lease any part of the decreed land, they can lease all of the decreed land.
Okay. Have you reached out to the Onset Bay Association?
OBA?
Yeah.
OBA in and of itself violates the decree when they close off the land for the Blues Festival and the even the Cape Verdean Festival. They shouldn't be able to charge people to put vendors on the decreed land.
No, but the charge is there in order to benefit back Onset, in order to pay for the fireworks, in order to continue the Blues Festivals, in order to continue all these programs in Onset that are for community, people in Onset, people in Wareham, and those who come from other communities to come and celebrate with us.
Well, that's the problem.
What's the problem?
The problem is they have made these events so big that there is no parking in Onset.
But do we say they've made the event so big, or the events have been very successful that they have gotten bigger by themselves?
Oh, yeah, but that's the problem. We've never had problems with parking in Onset till the OBA started having these big events. We used to have the Box 5 Association with the fire department, and they put on a summer fest, and they put on a Festival of the Harvest Moon, and it was very well attended, but we didn't have parking problems. Now they're parking everywhere they shouldn't. They're parking without permits. They're parking where they don't pay.
If you park without a permit, or if you park in the wrong place and not pay, you get a ticket. I myself got a ticket in Onset. If you're a resident of Onset and you have an apartment there or a house, I'm sure you're parking within your parking perimeters.
No, you don't have any.
Lots of houses.
You do not have a parking space.
Lots of houses in Onset do not have off-street parking. So the residents have to pay for this. But the parking's a different issue, and I really don't want to get off on the whole.
Oh, but the situation is, I'm saying, if you said that the Onset Bay Association also violates.
They do, but they're not there. The OBA is wonderful for social events, and they started originally as a business association. Now they're a social association, and that's wonderful. But they are no way involved in the conservation of the lands. That's not their job. That's not what they do. They have a beautification committee, but they are in no way involved in the conservation of Onset.
And you are.
Well, the people who want to protect the protected lands are. And so another issue is that there is no apparent plan for Onset as a village in terms of growth, in terms of the look and feel of the village, in terms of the blight. We don't even have that blight study back yet. There was a study 10 years ago that said there needed to be several things accomplished, none of which were. There's no overall arching plan, so things are just here, 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 here. I would love to see a community organization involving the people who actually live in Onset to work with what's going to happen with the fire station, what's going to happen with the hole in the ground that was the Onset Youth Center, what's going to happen at the Hammond School. They get a lot of rent for that building, and where does it go? And with respect to parking, at 2 separate town meetings, the administrator said directly to me, that money stays in Onset. When in fact, when I got the financials, it does not stay in Onset. So it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but there's no actual plan. I would love to, and even though the town has a draft plan that they have to do every 10 years, it hasn't been finalized by the state. There is nothing specific to Onset. We need to sit down and look at this. What's our library going to function as? The library is not open after 3 o'clock when kids need to go there and use the computers.
Lack of funding.
Yes, but we need a plan, and then we can go from where do we have to go to do that. The parking does make a lot of money. If it did stay in Onset, we'd have a different situation, but it doesn't. And now they're going to take Lopes Field. The playground is coming down, which is very insensitive to the Cape Verdean community, but that's part of the Onset, the Buzzards Bay Coalition, because they've got to have parking for all these employees, for the workers, for the kids coming for camp, for their parents. It's a huge operation with nowhere to park, so they're going to take Lopes.
But are you saying that dissolving Lopes Field the way it is and the new playground, the new Lopes Field being built somewhere else, which the location is still undisclosed, are you saying that's because of Buzzards Bay Coalition?
Absolutely, it is. So this is the overall arching plan that we need to have for Onset. What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? How do we make Onset the destination that it should and could be? Why do we have so many empty storefronts, as Marie pointed out earlier? There's very lax zoning enforcement. There's still a lot of blight, but we've in 2 years come very far with our organization. We've really helped clean up the area, and I don't mean just in terms of trash. And we really need to sit down and say, what's the overall plan for Onset? Not one of the selectmen live in Onset. Nobody lives anywhere near
But Onset is part of Wareham. Onset is Wareham town. So the argument that a selectman does not live in Onset, as long as you're in Wareham, you are in Onset, because Onset is part of Wareham. Such as the parking, we were talking about parking fees and that they're not going strictly to Onset. I would assume they go to the general fund of Wareham, town of Wareham.
No, they do not. They cannot go to the general fund. That would be illegal. There was a parking district, which is a legal term. The parking district was created, and it's very narrow what you can use that money for. And the town is not using it within that strict guideline. And I was told to my face twice at town meeting that the money stays in Onset when it does not. So it doesn't go back just into Onset. You can create a cultural district. You can create an Onset business district. You can treat villages, just like Marston Mills is a village in Barnstable. Hyannis is actually a village in Barnstable. You can create districts within a municipality that are treated differently because of their cultural or natural or other assets. And we can and should, but it's willy-nilly here and there, do this here, do this there. There's no overarching plan on how to do it, how to be cohesive, how to make it user-friendly for the people who are on Onset 365 days a year. And when these big events are there, there's just no overall plan.
Okay. So back to the Buzzard Bay and the leasing of the bathhouse. I put this from the Buzzard Bay Coalition website. The intention is to renovate and expand the Onset Bathhouse to what will become the Onset Bay Discovery Center. The goal here is recreation. Buzzard Bay Coalition is looking to engage hundreds of people of all ages in variety of outdoor activities to foster connections with the coast official.
That's great.
Okay. So once again, I know you're saying that the issue here is the leasing of the dedicated land. But with the intentions of Buzzard Bay Coalition, the passage that I just read, wouldn't you say that is something much needed to the community, not only Onset, but to Wareham community?
I don't know how it will tie into the rest of the community, but again, it goes to the idea that if you look at, I think there are 16 separate parcels.
I don't recall.
Around
offhand.
16 separate parcels that are part of the dedicated land, including Wobbin Hill. If they can lease, sell, whatever, any part of it, then we tear up the decree.
That means they could lease the beaches. That means they could lease all the parks, groves,
Wobbin Hill.
and actually part of that decree mentions the streets, avenues, and boulevards, which are dedicated to the free public use.
But you can't lease what you don't own, and they don't own the streets. They are the trustee of the streets. It's a very complicated issue, but it's a very important issue. And if we don't stand up for this now, what will Onset look like? It's going for the quick buck as opposed to a long-term plan.
Okay, and that's what you're pushing for, a long-term plan.
We would love to see that.
Have you reached out to the Onset Bay Association?
We did. We actually had a meeting scheduled with him that he canceled. So we were going to go, 5 or 6 of us from the neighborhood group over to meet with him, and he decided not to meet with us.
Okay, but it decided not to meet with you because something came up, or decided not to meet with you because he didn't
meet with us because he didn't want to talk to anybody who was opposed. And so we reached out to him and asked him if the plans were prepared and could we see them. We didn't get an answer. Again, I'm a paid up member. I can certainly attend a board meeting if I wanted to. But again, we are in no way or shape or form opposed to there being the Onset Bay Discovery Center. And they knew there was a problem because they went through this charade of reconstituting the Onset Bay Grove Association with Mr. War. And it was the Attorney General didn't even look at that because it's so irrelevant. She didn't rule on it. She didn't even want to look at it. And that was told to me directly because it's irrelevant. It didn't need to be done. So we don't know if the Buzzard Bay Coalition will exist in 99 years. They're not paying rent. They can close their doors and leave at any time. If they could have sold it, why wouldn't they have? Because if you're going to put $30 million into something, wouldn't you want to own the building? It all comes down to what is going to be the future of Onset. And they now own a good chunk of the land in Onset between Shell Point, Wickett's Island, and all the other pieces of land that they're buying up in Onset. They own a good proportion of the land in Onset right now.
Okay. So your claim, wouldn't you, the claim that you have made in the letter addressed to the Attorney General about that what happened between the Buzzard Bay Coalition and the town of Wareham is illegal, would you say that's a bold claim?
Marilyn was very clear, and I'm sorry, we wish her well. Marilyn had surgery a few days ago. She's doing great, but she can't be with us here. She's very adamant about her claim. And even if it weren't illegal, it's improper. It's improper to go to town meeting with one thing and turn around and do another.
But improper and illegal are two different words with two different consequences.
They are. And my term for today would be improper.
So it's not illegal.
I'm not saying it's not illegal. I'm not the Attorney General. I am.
No.
Nobody has adjudicated this. If there were,
Wouldn't the governor signing this special law, what took place signing it into a special law, wouldn't that be the adjudication?
Who could prove that he signed it? It could have been rubber stamped.
legislation and adjudication are two different things.
Small things like that.
But wouldn't you say a person such as Kat Jones, who have been in Onset and lived in Onset for pretty much all her life, that she has the better intentions of this community? And if a person like her can support what has taken place between Buzzard's Bay Coalition and the town of Wareham, that Onset is in good hands?
No, and the Onset is not in Kat Jones's hands. I'm sorry to tell you, it's not.
I've been in Onset a lot longer than she has, and I've seen what the town of Wareham has done to Onset through the years, and it is not pretty.
Yeah, I mean, people.
They have given away land that's dedicated to businesses. They have done a lot. They put that boat ramp in that wasn't supposed to be. That was on a bathing beach that was dedicated land. And they've improved it and updated it every so often. This isn't the beginning. It's just every time they do something to Onset, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
But Onset, like any other towns, cannot stay as it was back 20, 30 years ago. Things evolve. No, but I'm saying that towns evolve as times changes, and so are our communities. We are presented with different needs. We're presented with a completely different population.
Well, that boat ramp is only used by a private businessman and people from out of town. Very few Onset residents use the boat ramp.
Is it because very few residents in Onset have boats?
No, they go over by, the ones with the small boats go over by the dummy bridge and drag them across the beach.
But do they have the option of using the one in Onset if they want to?
Yeah, if they can get in. It's very busy in the summer with all the boats from this big boat business that goes in.
Okay, so where are we at with your mission towards restoring peace and dedicated land and making sure that Wareham does not mess with Onset?
Well, right now it's going before the Conservation Commission this evening. I'm sure this won't be the only meeting that takes place with the Conservation Commission. It shouldn't be. There are a number of things to consider, but when they exempted this from a great deal of the regulations, which is again nothing that the town voted on, that they very well may have a lot of leeway to take down the bluffs and disturb them and all of that kind of thing. But that's where it stands right now. I think they will need a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, but it may not be. They may be able to bypass that entirely. Again, we don't see planned growth. We don't see a cohesive growth. There is no one organization that represents Onset. There are so many issues, and we really need to sit down, put the brakes on, and say, how is this going to work overall for people?
When I mentioned to the community that I was going to meet with you, two things were said. First of all, they said, if you're very serious about your argument, why not hire your own lawyer to represent you and make sure things have been seen through. And another thing is, people labeled you guys as negative energy towards Onset, towards Wareham.
Well,
I don't know how to respond to that.
the history is Wareham has had a very negative opinion of Onset. As I was going through high school, there had never been a valedictorian of the senior class from Onset. And then in 1952, the first child was appointed valedictorian. We were the wrong side of the track.
But do we point valedictorians, or somebody qualifies to be a valedictorian?
Oh, there were plenty of people that were qualified.
By qualify, you have to have the highest marks, so you can qualify. So that's how they select valedictorians.
You could have a lot of straight A students and you still have to choose one. It's chosen by the faculty. But that's not the issue here. When I had a legal problem at my home and the Wareham police came, I was specifically told, you should have done your research and not moved into such a bad neighborhood.
You were told by who?
Wareham police. You should have done your research and not moved into such a bad neighborhood, and it's your problem, you moved into here, it's a mess.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies, for being
Thank
in
you.
the studio.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the show now. Don't go anywhere.
I won't run.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you to our viewers. Joining me in the studio again was Lisa Morales and Marie Strawn here from the Onset All Together Group to discuss the Buzzard Bay Coalition, its 99-year lease with the town of Wareham in regards to Onset dedicated land. From WCTV Studio, I am Queen Banda, and I wish you all a wonderful day.